OriginClear provides water treatment solutions worldwide, and they call themselves the first clean water innovation hub. And with me is CEO Riggs Eckelberry and Ken Berenger, the Executive Vice President, co-creator of Water on Demand.
Correct.
And I gotta have a lot to talk to you guys about because I've actually been watching the water market for a while, but let's just start with, what is the current state of the water industry? I feel like we take water for granted, but we really shouldn't. So, Riggs, could you start with that?
Well, the real question is what water market, right? It's all one big governmental monopoly being served by large water companies and a few mom and pops. That's basically it. Unfortunately, it's going very badly. You've been hearing about Flint, Michigan, Jackson, Mississippi, Compton, California. Notice that they're all poor places, and that's part of the problem. So water is actually a big problem. Why? It's underfunded. By $100 billion each year, it's falling behind. And what's going on? Business, industry, and agriculture is using most of the water, 90%. And then we're telling the rest of the people, well, you better take short showers. Excuse me. Industry and agriculture is part of the problem, but guess what? They're also part of the solution, and that's why we're here.
So you're really offering a private solution, or at least an accompaniment to the current state of water and how it's processed and used nationwide, right?
Well, think about AT&T. When it broke up, it created a vastly larger market. I mean, MCI was only the beginning. I mean, look back, it's the baby bells, the whole thing, right? So actually, when you have this big monopoly that breaks up, it creates new markets. What's happening is businesses who are having problems and the water rates are skyrocketing for everybody, they're moving away from the centralized, doing their own water recycling. And guess what? When they recycle, they don't pay for that water. So it's a good deal for them. They like it. And so we're helping them. Of course, there's two challenges. The first challenge is how to miniaturize the water systems from municipal down to a business. You're in a brewery, you got 300 square feet, what are you going to do, right? And the second problem is they don't necessarily have the capital. And we're here to help with that, with this new concept called Water on Demand. Okay,
so let's start with that. So explain the concept, Ken.
Okay, well, Riggs did a really good job of the intro, of the high view, but essentially, you're a business. 89%, we'll call it 90% of the water pollution happens upstream at agricultural, commercial, and industrial locations. Why don't we drink tap water? Why don't we drink our tap water? Because it's bad. It's got a lot of stuff in it. Because right now, the current municipal system is set up to treat one size fits all. It all comes in, all effluent comes into one location, and they try to remove all these contaminants, which they can't. So industrial, agricultural, and commercial locations are the ones that are polluting the water. Now, sometimes they deal with it, you know, if you're Pepsi, if you're Anheuser-Busch, you buy a $10 million system, you hire on a 24-hour basis, you have 3 water engineers that, you adopt each one at $250,000 a year, and you have the capital for that. So you're going to have a beautifully maintained private utility owned by yourself. That's not an issue. 99% of the businesses that are discharging unclean water or contaminated water are not Anheuser-Busch and they're not Pepsi. So it becomes, they need 3 things. They need capital, they need technology, and they need expertise. Water on Demand essentially provides all 3. Picture a miniaturized private utility placed at the point of discharge. You're a farm. Here you go. Here's your $1 million system. Oh, by the way, don't worry about paying for it. We're going to own it. We're going to manage it. You're going to have a remote monitored 24-hour a day, 7-day-a-week monitoring system. If something breaks, of course, they'll be there before you even know there's a problem. We'll control the effluent. We'll know exactly. You're only paying for the water quality that you've contracted for, and we'll know if it immediately doesn't hit that mark, we'll have someone immediately coming out, and it'll be regular maintenance as well. So we'll own it, we'll maintain it. You'll have almost a permanent presence monitoring the quality, and you just have to pay by gallon. So instead of paying some public utility, right, you're paying us. We're now your private utility. Oh, and for the company side, what's great about it is we own the asset, we own the contract, and now we have a multi-decade relationship with the end user rather than a one and done. So from a problem-solving solution, it's ideal. But from a business standpoint, it is an incredible, I would call it asset-rich model that allows us to have, starting out in the beginning, just some, but then, of course, many, many more of these systems that are producing royalty income.
We call it water like an oil well.
Water like an oil well.
Okay. So say that I have a small brewery or a farm, and I can go to you, and you could help me with the water situation. I don't have to invest all the money, but you can help make sure that whatever water I'm using is...
The first thing we did years ago was invest in the technology for miniaturizing these compact, long-life systems that drop in place.
Okay.
Modular water systems is called water systems in a box. Now that's essential. Why? Because you don't want, your brewery taken up by a bunch of pipes and filters and so forth. So that's number one. And then we found out during COVID that nobody had cash, and that's when we went, it's the money, stupid.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. So how big of a market could this be? You want to chime in on that?
Yeah,
Ken?
the existing water market. All right, so Riggs made a reference earlier to the breakup of the monopoly of the telecom industry. Now, the telecom industry is orders of magnitude larger than it was. So
the whole industry.
An early investor had it was literally a life-altering event if you invested at the beginning of the breakup of the monopoly. We see a lot of similarities with water. So the current water industry, in other words, the traditional municipal market with the pipes and the main structures and all that stuff, is $1 trillion a year in just commerce. Now, 80% of all sewage is not treated worldwide. Obviously, America does much better. Okay, we still don't drink our water because we're trying to do this one-size-fits-all. So, if theoretically, without that force multiplier that happens when you split up into smaller units, which of course creates greater than the sum of its parts, this could be a $4 or $5 trillion total addressable market.
So everybody uses water. I mean, it's absolutely necessary for life. And
crazy thing is that you can't actually trade water. Isn't it crazy? Water is the most important commodity there is, and yet there's no markets really to speak of. Why? Because it's a monopoly. Well, that's just how. Remember, you don't. I do. Back when AT&T was the only solution in the Princess phone, and that was it. You have no idea.
I've heard stories.
Exactly.
Yes.
But think of so much has changed.
She read the history books.
Exactly. So here we are, fast forward 50 years, and everything's changed. We believe the same thing is going to happen with water. It's an asset play. That's why we say water like an oil well. Literally, investors are able to come in right now and get a piece of a bucket of assets that returns royalties, shares in the parent company, and founding shares in this new thing, Water on Demand, which is the financial play. See, everybody's talking about aquatech, which is very interesting, but notice how hard it is for technologies to come to market in water. Why? No incubation. That's part of our mission.
And that's what you're doing. Okay.
Exactly. Now, with the incubation, now the aquatech comes, but you still need money, and the finance is key.
Okay. And what makes this timing right? I mean, is it environmental concerns? Is it some of the issues we've seen with municipalities and their water system? I mean, why is this a good time for water to be broken up and for it to have some
I think it's all of the above.
Okay.
Well, I get hot under the collar. I'm sorry. I'm going to get passionate here, because we have all these problems with water in America. And notice that they're poor places. Why? Because they're all the way downstream, literally relays and relays, and all the way out there in Flint, Michigan, the people just don't have great water. And why is that? It's because industry and agriculture is taking 90% of the demand. They're basically squatting on our water supply. And I think it's a scandal. Do you know that in Ireland, water is free? And it should be. Now imagine if businesses, which are happy to go off the grid and do their own water treatment, because why? It's better for them by a number of reasons. Imagine if they do that. Now the cities are only servicing people, homes, and they'll do a better job because it's only 10% of the load.
But it's also what they were designed to do in the beginning.
Okay.
100 years ago, there wasn't massive amounts of industrial productivity going on within the cities, okay? This was designed for household waste. Okay, 100 years ago, you flushed your toilet, and it really was okay. As children, I'm a child of the 60s and 70s. We drank tap, we drank out of the hose. I would never let my kids do that today. Why? Because I know there's stuff in the water. And what is that from? Is it from households? Of course not. Well, here's what's happening. You have an upstream, and then you have a downstream. So who's getting the downstream effect, the Flint, Michigan effect? You're getting the households, usually lower income households, okay? But who's at the top of the stream? Manufacturers, right? Now, a manufacturer who may use millions of gallons of water a day or a month or a week, they pay the same per gallon as the poor guy downstream. Okay. But they're the ones dumping the contaminants in. And listen, businesses want to do the right thing, but they also want to survive, okay? Taking on a very scary capex or potentially existential threat in terms of being shut down or fines or something like that is not something a business wants to take. If you can provide a business a way where they can actually reduce their operational expenses, right, by charging by the gallon to avoid fines, to avoid regulatory, shutdowns, things of that nature. Make it part of their business model where they actually save money. They are happy to help. And what happens is you're now delivering a end product to us as consumers, much cleaner, much purer, and potentially free. The difference is the one-size-fits-all couldn't accomplish that. All right, because you get 50 different sources feeding the area that's being treated. But if we're catering your specific water contaminant, if we're catering our system to get that right, okay, the end result is much better overall water. So it's been a century bending the curve to making contaminated
And now
water.
in California, they're telling people to take short showers.
Yeah.
But they're less than 10% of the load.
Yeah.
What about the 90%? It's a scandal.
Well, plus they've got, the computer chip, all the companies in
Well, the
California.
very toxic waste.
Yeah.
In addition, we have a problem in America of no recycling. Do you know Israel recycles 90% of its water? Spain, number 2, is 20%. U.S., 1%. Yeah. Why? We have a one-way system. Treat it and dump it.
Yeah, that's true. I wouldn't even know how to begin recycling the water that I use.
Well, not only that, the city's supposed to do it, but it's not built that way. It's not their fault. The cities are trying very hard.
Yeah.
I don't want to, totally savage them. They're wonderful people. But they're stuck with, just like the energy grid, it's a one-way system, right? But businesses, once they have their own system, they can recycle.
Okay.
They get more turns. They don't pay for that new water. And that saves vast amounts of money for them. So they're like, okay, we're good. Yeah. Now we control it. We have great rates. We're happy. And guess what? The cities can focus on the people.
So explain your solution. How does it work then?
Okay, it's very simple. First of all, miniaturization. We have these amazing, compact, modular water systems. And by the way, 100% American, no supply chain problems. So we're killing it right now, believe me. Secondly, we have the finance solution. And this is where, Ken and I created this thing called Water on Demand, which is a way for investors to go in. This is the only place investors can invest in a productive water asset, is right here, where they put their money into typically like a master limited partnership with oil wells.
Just about to say that.
Right? And it goes in to this bucket, and they get residuals, long term, as well as stock in the mother company, us, and stock in this new finance vehicle, Water on Demand. So they get the best of all worlds, plus some warrants. Why are we being so generous? Because this is the beginning, and we're only going to do a limited amount of funding this way, because we need the pilot plants. We have the technology, we have the money, we're now rolling it out. Well, rolling these things out is like building a housing development. It takes time. While that's happening, we're being super generous. If you're accredited, it's the way to go, because you only have, as I say, there's really no opportunities. Our competitors are in the venture capital world, or they're being run by JP Morgan. You can't invest in them.
Yeah, well, and we've talked about how, it's difficult to find a place to invest in water. There's like 3 places where you can,
Right, and they have limited growth, and they grow like, they just absorb smaller companies. If you want to get geeky and do a Star Trek reference, they're the Borg. They just keep, they keep absorbing smaller companies. The idea of globalized water as a service didn't work until some of our innovations. So there are companies that do it very, very well. So the miniaturized systems that Riggs is talking about, we know have worked magnificently because our business units have been selling them for decades, right?
And we tripled our business last year.
Yeah.
Right. So there's no secret that this works, okay? And this is well-adopted technology that any engineer is going to be happy to have. We can discuss about how this makes consulting engineers' lives incredibly good in a second. But I wanted, so the idea that water as a service didn't work on a globalized scale simply because these massive systems were being supplied to, entire islands were desalinating water using a per gallon, and it works great. But they're big systems dug into the ground. So the risk to the water service provider, they had to be perfect borrowers, perfect credit, giant companies or municipalities that could not default on the system, because if they did, you're not going to show up with a giant earth mover, dig out, it's a total loss to the water service provider. Only through this drag in, drag out modality that we've created did we create a movable asset, a movable or removable asset. So if the customer went out of business, you just take it away. Businesses that happens, right? Now it's not a total loss. Right? So we can do that pay per gallon thing. It could be a smaller end user, and if let's just say they have somewhat shaky credit, it would be something along the lines of maybe doing some additional security deposits.
It's a rent-to-center model.
Right.
Okay.
You're basically renting the machine, which is a very much lower credit requirement, right?
I see.
And you're paying as you go. You stop paying, sorry, machine goes away.
Okay.
Now you're in trouble with the city because you're back where you were.
Yeah. So finally, let's wrap it up with how can investors find out more about the company and learn more about it that you're doing, actually?
Very simple. OriginClear.com, and there's a big green Invest Now button. Okay. And the good news is that we will soon have an offering for unaccredited investors. It's in the works. But in the meantime, we're welcoming, accredited investors who are interested. The new thing is income-bearing assets, and this one's just at the beginning of its run, and we're very excited about our new investors.
Okay. I mean, it's a very interesting company and addressing a need that's out there. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.